I said a very loud hi last week, and it is a very loud hi on the video. These are the reference paintings. This is the one we started last week, and this is the one I've been working on this week because I didn't like this one. Do you want to put the same day on? John is trying to say something.
I only see your desktop as a little tiny, there it is. That's it. That's what I want.
There it is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting. From my perspective, it's upside down. I don't suppose that makes any difference. Okay. So this was the one we started last week, and I finished off with overly hard leaves and overly dark background, because what I was trying to achieve was something like this. This was my inspiration. And this guy hardly has any background. So I don't know, it's a guy. It's something I found on the internet. But I like this kind of background better, and so I did it again, like this. And I like this one better. I would still like it to be softer. And I realized just today that this shadow was making an absolutely straight line like that, and so I had to change it quick like a bunny, because straight lines get me nervous. I told you before about, or I mentioned last week about putting things on those flexible cutting boards. That's what this is.
Oh.
I had bought a bunch of them thinking they would be useful for something, and I didn't quite know what, and there they are. Anyway, we'll start the same way we have with doing the sponge bit. And I have my sponge water, but I don't actually have my sponges. Here they are. Yes, I am. But I'm going to do this, and then so that my thing can dry. Yeah. So here's this week's first piece of paper, which actually has a buckle in it, even though it's done on this with this, not warping thing. So it doesn't always work. And I want to do the same thing. I want to do 4 hydrangeas in a row. I have not gotten my ultramarine, so I have cut open that tube that you saw last time. I've cut it open, so I'm using the ultramarine that was inside the tube. This is the inside of the tube, and I have a little jar top of pink. Waste not, want not, right?
Great, yeah.
That's what we were taught. So I'm dipping my sponge in my little thing of water, and I'm wringing it out really well. I didn't spray my paint. Where's my spray bottle? I don't see my spray bottle. I don't know whether it's in the kitchen. I don't think it is. So I'm just slobbering water on my paint. I hear someone's spray bottle.
Yeah.
There we go. I've slobbered water. It's okay. So thank you. Excellent. Here's my sponge, my trusty falling apart sponge. I happen to like this one because it's got some nice big holes in it, so it'll make it kind of interesting. And I'm going to put my blue. The other thing I didn't like about the one that I did is the blue seemed to be squished in between 2 pinks, so I want to be sure this one comes way out. So here's my ultramarine hydrangea. And not to have straight lines. That's a big hydrangea. And now more ultramarine. That's the problem with using the inside of the thing. It doesn't stay. Which I'm doing down to this bottom one. And I think I'm only going to get 3 on here. And now adding pink to this bottom one because I wanted a mixture. So it should come out purpley. I think my hydrangea is getting larger and larger with each painting I do. Probably because it's really fun to do this sponge part. And doing the more controlled part is less fun. So I'm using up my space. Here's my blue. So I'm only going to get 3 on this. Now, if this isn't dry by the time we come to painting, then you will see that the one that I have ready for post slurp has 4. But you will not notice that. There we go. Okay. So that's our beginning. And now I'll put this aside and it will dry. Okay, so this is what I did sort of in preparation in case this happened. So here it is. This is the Graham Kerr Toast Slurp painting. And the thing that one does here is now that we have basically a dry painting, this is all dry, it's been dry since last night, in the places where the painting suggests you might put some flowers, you go in and you make some little petally things, some hydrangea things.
Hmm.
And a hydrangea has 4 petals, and they can be done just by making little rounds. There's one. And you don't want to do them bump, 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 bump like a typewriter. You want to say, okay, so here's this nice dark spot here. Let's make that an edge of a petal. And once I've done that, then it seems to me that this suggests another one. And so that's not really much of a painted petal. It's just sort of suggesting the shape from what's already there. And the same thing here.
Are you just using ultramarine blue in that?
In this one, because this is my just ultramarine blue petal. Hydrangea, rather.
Hydrangea.
Okay. Now this is running into a yellow, so I'm not going to try and make it into a blue because it'll turn green. And let's see what else. Here's another nice little round thing. Let's make a side thing. And this is where it gets interesting because it doesn't really suggest much more than that. But I'm going to make this whitish spot into a petal. And there's 2 ways to do this. Is you can fill in the petal. There's more than 2 ways. There's at least 2 ways to do it. Or you can make like an outline of a petal. Where shall I make an outline of a petal? Here, this is nice roundness here. And let's just go around the petal and darken the background. And then that will come out as a nice light colored petal. And I know that I always tell you, you don't make it, the real world doesn't have outlines. So I've just broken that rule. I break rules all the time, especially my own. So now I have to sort of darken the roundness so it doesn't look like an outline. Can we have the radio off or muted?
Yeah. Sorry.
When I put on when I do the audio, I'm keep trying to find where is that coming from. So now I've got a couple of suggestions of petals, and they don't have to be full flowers. And I'm sticking with the blue for the moment. It might be good if people basically muted themselves and then unmuted themselves when they want to ask a question.
Excellent.
Okay. The other thing that I discovered on one of my experiments, I do experiments. I mean, these things don't, you don't just sit down and all of a sudden paint. You have to think about it. Some. And not too deeply. You think about it and then you try it. And what I did is I took the sponge and I did a blot. And then it was wet. And now it's too wet. And then by accident, I touched it with my finger. And I discovered I could make 4 little touches and make it sort of look like a hydrangea. And that's when it's wet. So that was interesting. Okay, I'm switching to my pink now. Permanent rose. So here's a nice one that's very round. And that's very wet. That's way too wet. So I'm going to blot it. There we go. Here's another one that's pretty round. And I'm going to try and preserve that little bit of white. Might not get to do that. Where's one that I can make a light one with? Oh, let's do this because it's white in the center. So here I'm doing the outline thing. Where's the other one? There we go. Hmm. And here, that goes right into another one. And it's funny because I don't see them right away, but as I paint, then I see them again. This one only has 3. So I guess this 4th one, maybe I should do a little pulling off. Maybe I should do a little pulling off here. Okay. So you see, this is, the whole thing is the suggestion of flowers, not doing every flower. And as you do these suggestions, people will fill in the rest. Like here's this little dot, which I didn't see before. There's a little dot right there, and they didn't see it. So I'm gonna say, okay, that's the center of a flower. Okay, so now I'm gonna go up to my top one, and I'm gonna turn my paper and see what I can do up here. The other thing you can do is the kind of thing that we talked about with our fog paintings, is that you can take paint off in a little circle. So where do I have a place where I could do that? Let's do that right here. So this is just water taking the paint off. And of course, once you do that a bit, then your brush has paint on it. So you have to, where'd it go? There it is. You have to keep cleaning it if you're just painting with water. As I'm making this one, I'm noticing other little bits that I'm painting over and saying, oh, that would have been so good, but I haven't done it that way. I've done this white on white, white on the color. I don't know if that looks like a hydrangea bud or not. Now this is really dark, so I'm going to make a petal next to it, another one next to it, and this isn't one of the outline ones. And what am I using? I'm using an 8. That's bigger than I expected that I was using. I think if I had thought about it, I would have used a 6 or a 4. Except that my 6 is the one that's so broken up that the handle is falling apart because they're cheap brushes. And now I'm going to fill that one petal in, the one that was the gift of the painting. This is not wet enough. Now it's too wet. Yeah. Now the dark petal that started out this flower is becoming the lightest part of this of this particular flower. Now here's a more pink one. This is a purple flower, sort of a purpley flower. And it's a round sort of little dot that looks to me like the center of a flower. And here's a nice round thing. And another round thing. And now because these are supposed to be purple, I'm going to dot a little blue in it. Now I want to have some things out at the edge so that people know that it continues to be flowers. But in one sense, I also like to keep the raggedness of the sponged edge. So you see why 27 hydrangea flowers was too many? Because this takes some time. Good. How's that looking? Are you seeing this upside down? Yes. Does that make more sense? I don't know why it's upside down. Good. My sponge bowl has gotten very blue. I like to go back and forth across the flowers because I see different things when I come back to them. And sometimes you don't have to do a whole flower. Like here, it just looks like 2 petals. And then in back of it, it seems to be there's another petal. I'm sorry. You're the one that taught me about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now you can see that you can just keep doing this forever. One of the things that makes it look more like hydrangeas is that after you've done a bunch of these, is you go to your black, your actual black, and you find little centers. Yes, black, and put little centers. Not where it's too wet, because then, then the center reaches out and goes all over the whole flower. And what I've done, yeah, you can see it, is that I'm not using the black out of here because it's too strong. I'm using some black that I've just smeared on my palette, because otherwise then I'd get too much black and it goes everywhere, because you only want a little tiny dot. And this might also be a place to use light mapping pens or a very fine marker or a pen. And as I've done that, then I can come up here and you see in the white, there's no flowers. But if I put little black dots, all of a sudden your eyes see flowers where there aren't any. This left and right business it's bad. I'm bad enough with that. I'm dyslexic as it is, but doing it on the camera makes it worse. So anyway, these little black dots help you define where your flower center is and help trick the eye so that people see lots of flowers where there aren't any. And you can even put little dots where you haven't done a darn thing. And the point of having the white in between is so that you know that that's where the light is. Do I have my dots? Here's a dot where there's no flower. Here's another dot where there's no flower. Here's a dot where there's only a petal. Here's a dot that was too wet. And here's one that hopefully isn't now. I didn't do enough pink flowers. So I can put some dots and then later I can build flowers around them. Okay. I'm looking at this guy's painting. Again, I think this is, does that make sense? He just has these green dribbles. Do you guys hear that? A little round thing that has a name that begins with an A. Thought I was talking to her. So I'm going to try some little dribbles here. And I have not been successful with this thus far. So it's an experiment. And in order to do that, I want to have he has a very dark green and actually some blacks and then some yellows, yellowy greens, and it looks very, very wet. I'm not doing the jug. So I'm going to mix some of that. I can use the blue water, it doesn't matter. So this is my hooker's green. And I'm going to put some black on the edges. And the reason I'm saying on the edges is because I can pick it up from here, from my darks. And then I'm going to put some yellow. And this is not gamboge. This is yellow ochre, sort of on the other side. So I can mess them all about. And I'm going to get a slobbier brush. This is too small. It's nice having a sponge. I can just blot it on the sponge. And here we go. We were talking about this before the class began. Let's take a look at what this looks like. I think that maybe wants a little more black. We talked about having that's nice and dark. Thumb it down a little bit. Oh, that looks sort of like something he might do. Assuming this is a he. I don't have any reason to assume it's a he. And I want it to be close into here. And I want it to slobber out that way. Slobber over some of the things that I've already done. So that it's defining those places where I've put little dots where there's no flowers. And as you see, I tried to do this ahead of time and it didn't work very well. I don't like this corner at all. And so now I'm going to run some other colors through it, through the wet, including the yellow. And I'm holding the board this way. Can you see this? No. So that it will drip. Because I'm wanting the drip. And I'm going to add some more black to this right in here. Because it's the black that makes the flowers stand out, but I don't want it to seem somber. I just want it to seem shadowed. I told everyone to mute themselves, and now I feel like I'm all alone. This is the problem with stuff that's already dried. Now, except for the thing that I did early on, which I think was a mistake. I think that that's getting closer to what it is that I was looking for. Again, I'm making suggestions of the flowers with the background. And the idea is that this white is where the light is hitting the hydrangeas. I think it's going to need more. Not more of this stuff. It needs less of that. That stuff is no good. But the flowers themselves could be, there could be more sponging. There's maybe a little bit too much white. So I can come back in, back with this. This is a disgusting sponge. I often talk about going back into a painting. And for newer people, it just means just what I'm doing now. I see something and I say, I don't really like that. So even though I've done this particular part before, I'm going to do some more. And when Louise was talking about her having her painting on the couch all week, that's exactly what she was doing. She was going back into what I would call going back into the painting. Does that make sense to you guys? Am I making any sense?
Yes.
Okay, let's soften this some. So now the idea is that we have the sunlight hitting these white bits, the hydrangeas around them. They're a little bit too regular. I think my hydrangeas are too regular. Regularity is a bugaboo of artists, I think.
Yeah.
Things get regular, then they don't look natural.
The hobgoblin of little minds.
Yeah.
Elon,
Yeah.
is my paint too dry to put on top of there? It just doesn't look like a hydrangea to me.
I think, are you making X's?
Well, I was trying to make 4 petals, but I think my paper
They-
was too dry, so it
Yeah,
looked like
it may have been. It may have been. Or your brush was too dry.
my brush was too dry. But 4
Yeah,
petals, you said, yes?
Yeah, it's 4 petals, but they're sort of little rounds. Let me see if I can get really close to the camera and do it. Just make a little round. Maybe you need a bigger, look, this has got green on it. Let's not have a green petal. Let's have a pink petal. So you just do a little round circle. And the other thing is to leave space for your little dot in the center. I'm actually doing this on very wet, so you can see it's moving.
Uh-huh.
But my brush is pretty wet even where I'm doing it on dry. Which is why you can also just do it with your finger.
But that one circle you're making is 1 petal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm blotting it all.
Okay, thank you.
I'm blotting it all to make it even messier. I'm into this messy business these days. Not into sort of disciplined reality. Blot, 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 blot. Now, if I want to have more definition, like in these other greens that are coming in, now that this is dry, I can take some of my green and I can make a petally thing, a leafy thing rather. I'll do another one here. And hydrangea leaves they're sawtoothed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
It's okay. When my mother taught me, when somebody says thank you, you say you're welcome. So some of these may suggest leaves too. In other words, some of just your messinesses. And you just help the suggestion along. Chris is bringing my slurp, even though we're sort of past the slurp hour. I don't know where the camera is. There we go. Have a sip, everyone.
Thank you.
You should know that this time she carefully put out the wine glass before the painting started and said, "That's for later."
And
I knew,
he's good at taking hints. Ah, that's made out in the wet, but there's no actual paint. There we go. too dark, too dark, too dark. One of the things that I love about watercolor is doing this kind of thing where you sort of allow paint to be in the tip of the brush and you kind of wipe it. To me, it's very sensual. It's the feel of the watercolor that I like. Now, my son-in-law, who is a painter in oils, and he's a very good painter in oils, he hates watercolor. And I imagine it's because he doesn't like he likes the sensation of the oil, which is also a sensation kind of thing. But it's a different sensation. I'm feeling pretty good about this now. I think I want a little more definition. I don't want them all shaped the same. So I'm adding a couple of petals actually in my green even. And that works best with the blue because it's the darker one. It's hard to put pink on top of green. I can use the blue in the purple one. And now not stick it in my wine because that would be really gross. Oh, that's very dark. I would like it if people would come away from my classes realizing that it's not scary, that I mess up all the time, and it's not scary. You can always come back, and you can always do it again. It's only a piece of paper, as we keep saying. Now this one I think is too dark. You see it stands out compared to all the others. So I'm going to dumb it down. There we go. I think that was one of the first ones I did. My brush was very full of paint. I think I wiped out my center as well here. That's better. It's more like the others. And this one's quite dark too. There. Ooh, I need a new tissue. My tissue is putting more paint on instead of taking it off. Now in my whites, I can just take a brush with water and it will take paint from the sides and help create a little bit more of a shape if I need it, if I feel I need it. And in one sense, I don't really feel I need it. I like the idea that the viewer's eye completes the painting. But it's something one can do. And again, it's just a hint. It isn't actually a flower. It's just a roundness. I'm just creating roundnesses. There, I think that's good. I'm going to add my little dots. Don't stick your brush in the wine because some of my dots have disappeared. This one, the dot disappeared. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yep.
If you wanted the space between the flowers really to be more in shade, in other words, the front of the flowers themselves are in the sun and that between them is more in shade, how would you have done that?
I would make it dark. I would make it black.
Just bring it right at this point, like around now?
Yeah. Or I wouldn't have left this light. In other
Okay.
words, I wouldn't have left this white. I wanted my white coming this way.
Okay.
Now, if I wanted to change the whole feel of the painting, thing is, in this painting, it will get very closed because we've already got a lot of dark around the flowers. But we could do this.
I'm not saying to do it. I'm just wondering how.
We can do this. Oh, that's very black. Don't put it in one. Point it the other way. Goes my point. And still continuing the same kind of sort of looking for petals. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Wipe those out. And now that we've got a bunch of black, is it receding? Should be.
Mhm. Yeah.
Might not be. The big thing about this kind of thing is you want this tapering off stuff to happen. Ah, I've taken too much off. Is that working?
Sure.
Maybe. Maybe. Maybe it's working. Certainly makes my front pinks very pink, very light. And then the other thing I might do, I want this really clean, is lighten this. Are they coming forward? More or less. I don't know. Is that working for you, John?
Yeah, that's another way.
This is still in light. That makes it hard. Because I think that then if I were going to plan my painting that way, I would have had this one down the bottom or this one down the bottom, because this pink is just naturally more light, you know. So if I want, I thought of it as it going back.
The black between them actually pulls out, makes the colors more intense.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's why you do want to do this darkness around the edges.
Yeah.
Even if you want to keep some white, but you want the darkness to fill in, and it also gives you more shape. Hydrangeas are frustrating. I have found them frustrating for a long time. I kind of like the bleeding of the pink into the rest of the painting. Let's do that on purpose. I'll probably hate it once I do it on purpose. Now it's too much. But we would never know that if I didn't try it. So if we blot it, yeah. Okay, so now I need to put black up top. As we say, it's only a piece of paper, right? So we have to try these things. So now let's add blue the way we added pink. I hope my blue comes in. I have another tube I can cut up. But after that, I'm in trouble.
Is it from Amazon?
Yeah, and it's funny because I ordered a black at the same time, and they said that the black was on back order. So I said, all right, well, that's the way it goes. And I'm doing a dry brush thing. And the black came yesterday. And that was on back order.
How long does it take you to go through one tube?
Oh, a long time. I've given up on buying the small tubes. The small tubes are cheap, pretty cheap. You know, you get for $5, you can get 8 ounces. But I get the big ones now because I use them for classes. So in some sense, it makes it hard for me to know how much I use, because I take these kinds of broken things home and use them. But this, if I have to, I can paint with this blue, this much blue in which is just this cutout cutout tube.
Mhm.
I can paint with that for probably a month if I have to. But I don't like feeling needy. I don't feel like feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got to be careful of this. See, the other thing I do is I go back, and I've talked about this before. It's not like coloring books. You don't just put in color and leave it. You have to go back in and go back in. And do I have a dry brush? Yes. And that's what makes for the interest. This is still looking like the top is the lightest part. Different kind of painting. Now I need black up at the very top. And this is allowing me to shape my flower a little bit differently. I'll leave one light flower and see how that goes. Or if it looks too absolutely bizarre. Yeah, it's a different painting.
So the leaves are gone entirely.
Well, I can put them back.
No, I'm just saying it's
Yeah. Yeah, you wipe things out. And now now it's so wet, you could do leaf shapes with dryness. Because it's just a hint. Just like these are just a hint of flowers. It's fun. See my finger ones? See, you've got a flower just made with fingers. Of course, our young people, they're going to go to school and say, well, my painting teacher said I could just put my fingers in the paint.
finger painting.
No, it's not really finger painting. It's just putting the fingers in the paint. Using your finger as a paint thing. Okay, I'm going to call this pretty much done. The other place to make it dark is like where there's little bits of white. Is to add dark in there carefully and keeping an eye on petals. And if you were wanting to do this kind of thing that John's talking about, you'd have more of this dark up near the top and less down the bottom. Oh, that white flower is not working.
Off with its head.
Right.
Just pick it and put it in a bouquet.
Yeah. So, hydrangeas. Okay.